It's now my pleasure to call on the Director of Government Relations in the Office of External Affairs in Ottawa for the Baha'i community, a lady who brings the views and concerns of the Baha'is to parliamentarians and the Government of Canada in relation to issues such as citizenship, children and youth, pluralism, and reconciliation. And she actually advocates for other countries where Baha'is are experiencing state-sponsored religious persecution. My pleasure to present to you Corinne Box.
Thank you very much for the invitation to briefly present the current situation of the Baha'i community in Iran. In a recent Globe and Mail op-ed, a colleague of mine wrote, "Now that the nuclear-related economic sanctions against Iran are being lifted, many countries are looking forward to a new era of political and economic relations with the Islamic Republic." Can you hear me? No? No. Better? No. Sis? No. Okay. The recent prisoner exchange between Iran and the United States struck a hopeful chord about the possibilities of productive dialogue and engagement. The next step, according to some observers, is to rapidly expand economic access to Iran's markets for Canadian firms. Viewed differently, however, the achievement of the nuclear agreement represents the removal of just one obstacle to the restoration of Iran to a respected member of the international community. The next step is for Iran to curb the brutal treatment of its own citizens. End of quote. The Baha'is in Iran are members of the country's largest religious minority. And despite their widely noted contributions to the social and economic development of Iran, they have faced heightened persecution since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Although the tactics of the government have evolved, all evidence confirms that the 1991 policy of eradicating the Baha'i community is still very much in effect. Notwithstanding the repeated public statements by President Rouhani during his campaign for election, and throughout the years that have elapsed since he assumed office, authorities continue to perpetrate wide-range injustices against Baha'is, including through the continued detention of the 7 former Baha'i leaders, the constant threat of searches on homes and workplaces, the arbitrary arrest and ongoing illegal detention of Baha'i citizens, the harassment of Baha'i school children, the continued ban on Baha'is attending or teaching at post-secondary institutions, the destruction of Baha'i cemeteries, and the closure of Baha'i-owned farms and businesses. These unrelenting attacks have been met with a peaceful and constructive response from the Iranian Baha'is. They continue to appeal to their government for justice and work with their fellow citizens for the social and material well-being of their society. This response lays an extra burden on us all to come to their defense, using whatever opportunities we have at our disposal to ensure their plight is not forgotten, that their human rights and those of their fellow citizens are championed, and that Iranians are assisted to build a prosperous and peaceful future for themselves. While we may be tempted to believe that efforts of the international community to call the Iranian government to account are in vain, there is reason to believe that they are having a profound effect on a small promoting a culture of justice and coexistence, calling for mutual respect and understanding between people of all religions, and for advancing a discourse on civil rights for all Iranians, irrespective of religion, sex, race, and ethnicity. Surely, this is most impressive in relationship to the growing number of Iranians who are speaking out on behalf of Baha'is, who after years of a government-sponsored deliberate campaign of vilification have become Iran's untouchables. As these voices grow in strength, so too must the pressure from Canada and members of the international community, lest Iran, sensing a waning of interest, embark on other vicious crackdowns on its own people. We must not rest until Iran recognizes and accepts that its own best interests are served by respecting the human rights of all of its citizens. Canada's policy on Iran has been steadfast in support of human rights since the 1979 revolution. Preoccupied by the worsening human rights situation in Iran, Canada took the lead at the Third Committee of the United Nations General Assembly in the fall of 2003 and initiated a resolution on the human rights situation in Iran, and has continued to do so every year since, under various governments. Canada has also taken advantage of other opportunities afforded by the United Nations to express its concern and to work on securing entry to Iran for the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran. We recognize that in light of changing world events, the government is re-examining its relation with Iran, and it's our hope that Canada will continue to uphold its past focus on defending the rights of the oppressed in Iran, including members of religious and ethnic minorities, women, journalists, academics, and human rights defenders. And I thought I'd just conclude by leaving the last word to Malvesh Sabet, one of the 7 former Baha'i leaders. From her prison cell, she writes, "Though they still lie smothered, still lie wrapped in cobwebs, still slumbering the night out,